So I saw this and I actually laughed that this is a symbol of violent extremism because there's been 2 times in recent history that the Betsy Ross flag has made the news in a significant way. And the first time was during the second inauguration of guess who? Guess which president? Barack Obama flew the Betsy Ross flag at his second inauguration. Yes, this very same flag, the 13 white stars in a circle representing the 13 original American colonies. And Barack Obama flew this. Now, was this racist? Of course it wasn't. Was this unfeeling? Of course it wasn't. Was this a symbol of violent militia extremism or domestic terrorism? Obviously not. But this just shows you exactly what the agenda of the FBI and the leftists who have completely corrupted the FBI, they don't care about the context of this flag or the fact that Barack Obama embraced this flag not too many years ago. That would have been in 2012 or I guess early 2013 at his second inauguration. Less than 10 years later, suddenly if you fly this flag, you might be a domestic terrorist, so you better watch your back according to the FBI. That's the first time or the first example in recent history of this flag making the news. The second time happened just a couple years ago when Colin Kaepernick, good old Colin Kaepernick. You hadn't heard that name in a while, had ya? Well, if you're like me, you were hoping to not hear it in the news ever again. Well, sorry to bring him back. But Nike was debuting a new sneaker that was adorned with the Betsy Ross flag because this was a very uncontroversial thing to do until the FBI decided that it was controversial. And this was a throwback to American history. Who doesn't love that? But Colin Kaepernick, who was hired and paid by Nike, reached out to them at the time and said that he was offended by this, that the Betsy Ross flag was an offensive symbol. It wasn't just he was offended by it. He said this Betsy Ross flag was an offensive symbol. Why? You ready for this? Because of its connection to an era of slavery. So he wasn't saying Betsy Ross was racist. He wasn't saying the flag was racist. He wasn't saying it represented anything racist. He was just saying that it's offensive because it was connected to the late 1700s and the early part of the American Republic. And Nike, of course, being the cowardly wokesters that they are, of course, caved. They asked the people who'd already purchased these shoes to send them back, and they discontinued this and apologized and, embarrassed themselves horribly. But this struck me as particularly absurd. I mean, even for the left, even for wokesters, even for Colin Kaepernick, who, whose absurdity knows no bounds. I thought this was so far beyond what I would have even expected for him, because is everything that happened in our country in 1775, 1776, is everything offensive? Is everything something that we have to reject because there was also slavery at the time? If you're a leftist, the answer to that is yes. And that tells us exactly what the agenda of the left is for our country. Because if we have to reject everything that came from that era because slavery also existed, then we have to reject the United States of America. We have to reject the Declaration of Independence. We have to reject the Constitution of the United States. We have to reject the legitimacy of the U.S. itself, which is, of course, exactly what the left wants. So I thought this was a funny example of the Betsy Ross flag all of a sudden goes from being at Barack Obama's inauguration, his second inauguration, like I said, even closer to us than his first inauguration. And it was totally fine there. And now if you fly the Betsy Ross flag, then you might be a militia violent extremist. The FBI thinks you're a domestic terrorist.